Little Jenny's Journey Through the Phases of Learning to Read and Spell, Part 4. Hi, this is Jennifer Militzer-Kopperl of Renewal of Literacy. I'd like to continue telling you my story of my journey through the phases of learning to read and spell. It will help you understand the phases and how to teach all your students to read and spell. Let's review the phases of learning to read and spell. They are: number 1, emergent phase; number 2, phonemic awareness phase; number 3, pattern phase; number 4, syllable phase; number 5, Latin Greek phase. As you may recall, little Jenny has just gone through the pattern phase. She now can read, but not everything. The syllable phase is phase 4. The key to reading and spelling the big words is knowing how to work with syllables. Now that Jenny had cracked the code, she loved to read. But as little Jenny, I could not read everything yet. One day I got stuck on a really long word. I went up to ask my 3rd grade teacher, Mr. Schwemmen, what it said, as was my wont. Mr. Schwemmen said, "Jenny, you don't need me to tell you what each long word says. Just break it down into syllables. Watch." And then he did something amazing. He split the word into smaller bite-sized pieces, all of which I could easily read. This ability to break a word down into its syllables revolutionized reading for me. Disposable, disposable. Lots of lessons on common prefixes and suffixes followed. With practice, I discovered that I could decode just about any word. This made long chapter books possible, including that book Heidi that I so desperately wanted to read in 2nd grade. The more I read, the more I wanted to read. And thanks to the instruction on all these great prefixes and suffixes, I could go through and recognize each of these prefixes and suffixes on sight, just like a sight word. Pre, trans, re, shun, shus, shun, jul. And then in 4th grade, everything changed. Just like in Steiner's schools, in public schools, the curriculum switches from learning to read to reading to learn. Fortunately, little Jenny was ready for this momentous transition. As little Jenny, I knew how to decode. So when I started to study subjects in public school, I loved it. It didn't matter how long the word, I could read it. Photosynthesis, latitude, longitude. I could sound out any new word, no matter how long, no matter how challenging. School was amazing. It opened up the whole world. Despite all the new subjects in school, I still loved to read for pleasure. My cousin introduced me to the best series of all, Nancy Drew Mysteries. The library had an entire set, and I read through almost every single book on the shelf. There was just one problem. Little Jenny had to learn to spell as well as she could read. And spelling was the fly in the ointment. We had weekly spelling word lists, and we had to memorize the spelling of 20 words in 1 week. In grades 4, 5, and 6, little Jenny battled spelling. As little Jenny, I would wrestle with my weekly spelling lists. Other kids would memorize them on the bus on the way to school on Friday before the final test. But I had to study every day. Worse, I would forget the words if I didn't practice incessantly. I didn't know what was wrong with me. One day, I was complaining to my neighbor, Mrs. Turner, about how hard it is to learn weekly spelling words. Mrs. Turner was surprised that I was struggling. She said, "Jenny, just close your eyes and imagine the word." I rolled my eyes and thought to myself, yeah, right, and Santa Claus exists too. How stupid do you think I am? But I quickly discovered that my friends could do exactly as Mrs. Turner said. They could see the spelling in their mind's eye, and I could not. When I close my eyes, it's just black. I can't see anything at all. Jenny had a problem with symbol imagery. Symbol imagery is the capacity to visualize letters and words. Note that the girl in the illustration is closing her eyes and visualizing the spelling for the word cat. She can see the 3 letters in her mind's eye or her imagination. As a result, spelling was the one subject in school I struggled with. I studied every night to memorize the 20 spelling words each week, and I had to practice to keep them in my memory. I drilled the lists over and over and over, before dinner, after dinner. Spelling was so much harder than reading. Learning to spell took more time than any other subject. It was torture. Because she could not see them in her mind's eye, little Jenny took to chanting the spelling for every word over and over. Here's a picture of me as little Jenny chanting the spelling of necessary. Necessary, 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 necessary. If you thought that was excruciating to listen to, know this. That was only a fraction of the number of times I had to repeat that focaccia word. I would have to study for hours to memorize 20 words a week. And every week there was a brand new list of words to memorize and all of the previous ones that I had to keep in memory. Necessary, 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 necessary. Yeah, it was necessary. Spelling took the bloom off the rose. School lost almost all of its appeal. Every week, 20 new words to memorize. Every week, starting from scratch with a new list of words. Every single week. Every single word had to be chanted into memory. And the old words had to be chanted so they wouldn't be forgotten. Necessary, 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 necessary. Through dogged perseverance, little Jenny learned to spell and completed the syllable phase in 6th grade. As a reader and speller, little Jenny became a big frog, just like the other 6th graders. As little Jenny, I thought I was done, but it turned out there was one more phase to go. So now let's summarize little Jenny in the syllable phase. Reading was now easy, but spelling was impossible. Little Jenny lacked symbol imagery. She could not visualize the words for spelling. Jenny had just completed the syllable phase. She learned to read by syllable by the end of 3rd grade. Her spelling skills caught up by the end of 6th grade. This is roughly average. Most students finish with the syllable phase somewhere between grades 5 through 8. The reason it takes so long is students have to learn to spell by syllable as well as they can read by syllable. Up next, Phase 5, the Latin and Greek phase. This has been Jennifer Militzer-Kopperl of Renewal of Literacy. Thank you for accompanying me on my journey through the phases. Join me in renewing literacy for the 21st century and beyond.